We are an industry that's, I guess, about 35 years old. And in many ways, we, from a technology standpoint, would consider ourselves to be, at the leading edge of what we do. The workloads that we host in data centers, of course, are very much at the leading edge of how the business-to-business and the consumer relationships that we have with each other and our partners is progressing. I think one of the challenges is that we've, to a certain extent, been quite an engineering and a technology-driven industry, in as much as that we've considered quite carefully, and actually in many cases extremely well, how we design data centers, how we select equipment in data centers, how we make technology choices in data centers. And we've largely, to a certain extent, been quite dominated by capital investment. So we tend to look at data center deployments in the context of capital investment. I think what we're starting to do now as an industry is to think much more carefully about the life cycle of that infrastructure. So when we make design choices, when we make technology choices, when we choose equipment, when we choose our suppliers, I think we're starting to see much more effort being put into what the impact for the life cycle of that infrastructure actually looks like. And what I mean by that is that we're getting to the stage where we're a lot more focused on the business value, we're getting a lot more focused on the financial behavior of the infrastructure that we're building. We still, obviously, as an industry, want to manage the most reliable infrastructure, the most efficient infrastructure, but I think the cost and the business value of that infrastructure is now a much bigger part of the discussion. And I think what's interesting is that we, to a certain extent, as an industry that is maturing, are going through exactly the same kinds of processes that many other industries have already been through prior to us. So if you look at the more industrial sides of our infrastructure in the world, whether it's oil and gas or pharmaceuticals, life sciences, water and utilities and power and nuclear power stations and so on, they've had to go through a very, very similar set of exercises. Going back over the last sort of 20 or so years, they've become much more focused around operational efficiency rather than perhaps just energy efficiency or specifications of equipment and technology. They have, for those 20 or 25 years, have become very, very good at understanding the financial impact of the choices that they make. In other words, they're much more focused on the operational life cycle and what that looks like throughout the life cycle of that infrastructure. And I think we have an opportunity as an industry to not rediscover that for ourselves, but perhaps to learn from the lessons that other industries have already learned. And that is to think about data center infrastructure as a living, breathing thing that has a 10 or a 15-year life cycle. And the choices that we make today very much govern what that life cycle looks and feels like operationally throughout the time that we own and operate that infrastructure.